Greetings, nerdlings, and welcome to AmalgamNation presents World of Loreccraft, Zonecraft, Hinterlands edition. The earliest inhabitants of the Hinterlands were the forest trolls of the Amani Empire. This ancient empire stretched across much of the eastern Northern, with the Hinterlands at its heart. Many great troll cities were built in this region, and their colossal ruins still testify to the once great empire. The great empire felt the beginnings of its doom when the exiled High Elves arrived in Lordaeron. The trolls, though cunning and great in number, were no match for the arcane fires of the elven mages. The elven armies pushed the trolls out of the northern reaches of their empire and built their own cities in their newly acquired country, Quel'Thalas. The trolls were forced to retreat to their bastions in the hinterlands to the south, where they would remain, wary of the elves and their magic for several generations. When the humans of Arthur began organizing themselves into a true political entity, the trolls decided to prevent them from gaining a foothold in the political geography of the region. The Amani trolls massed their power in one last bid against their adversaries, but it was for naught. The High Elves, seeing a way to be rid of the troll menace once and for all, taught the humans the secrets of the arcane arts. The trolls were no match for the combined armies and mages of the humans and High Elves, and they were utterly defeated. This defeat marked the last time the Amani forest trolls would join together as a single nation. Scattered and defeated, the remains of the Amani returned to their homes in the hinterlands. Because of their terrible loss, their well-established civilization was virtually gone, and their great monuments and temples began to crumble with no one to keep them up. The next time the Hinterlands would play a significant role in history was the coming of the Wildhammer clan of dwarves. After the War of the Three Hammers, the Wildhammer dwarves forsook their subterranean homes and travelled north to the hinterlands, where they built dwellings above the ground at the city of Airy Peak. They adopted a society that focused less on metalworking and mining and more on a closeness with nature. They were and remain unique among dwarves, and indeed all races traditionally of the Alliance, in their cultivation of shamanistic practices. The dwarves also soon realized they had a strong affinity for the wild griffins of the hinterlands. Soon they trained griffin riders who would fly into battle wielding the powers of the storm. So strong was the bond between the dwarves and the griffins that the dwarves constructed an enormous monument in the likeness of a griffin at Airy Peak. Eventually, these griffin riders would become perhaps their most valuable gift to the Alliance. Upon their arrival, the dwarves found themselves immediately at odds with the trolls of the hinterlands. Though there are no accounts of open hostility between the two, a lasting mutual disdain settled upon the two factions. By the time the Wildhammer clan arrived in the hinterlands, the trolls had recovered some of their numbers after the devastating war with the humans and High Elves. These remnants split themselves into three separate tribes. The Vilebranch tribe was the strongest and held the ancient Amani bastions of Jinta Alor and the Altar of Zul. The Witherbark tribe was weaker than the Vilebranch, residing amongst the old temples of Shadra Alor and the ruins of Hiriwata. The weakest of the three tribes was the Reventusk tribe. The Reventusk trolls were nomadic and called no place their home. For many hundreds of years, this was the state of affairs for the trolls. When the ravenous horde crashed through the dark portal and sacked Stormwind, the omens of hope began to glimmer for the trolls. When the orcs invaded a second time, they ploughed through Khazmodan and into Lordaeron. The three tribes saw the horde as the means to their redemption. The forest troll tribes joined the horde, seeking to destroy their old enemies, the elves and the humans. They even managed to invade Quel'Thalas, but the horde was ultimately defeated. Seeking to avoid the orcs' fate of imprisonment and slavery, the trolls abandoned their allies and returned to the hinterlands. Their dreams of former glory shattered. Even though the trolls were defeated in the war, their role in the greater scheme of things was not quite spent. During the same war, the Wildhammer dwarves sided with the Alliance. Horrified at the defeat of their ancestral homeland of Casmodan, they sent their powerful griffin riders into battle against the Horde. Perhaps without them, the Alliance would not have won. In the events that transpired in Lordaeron during the years to come, their hinterlands were little affected. The Wildhammer dwarves took in some refugees fleeing the destruction wrought by the Scourge, and many forest trolls moved south as well. It was only after the defeat of the Burning Legion in Kalimdor that the hinterlands began to grow in importance once again. After the Horde had established a new homeland in Kalimdor, emissaries were sent to the eastern kingdoms, seeking allies. Some of these emissaries came to the trolls of the hinterlands, seeking to renew the friendships of old. The Vilebranch and Witherbark refused outright, but the Reventusk trolls, seeking to raise their position, reluctantly agreed. Thereafter the Horde aided the Reventusk in building their first settlement after centuries of wandering, Reventusk Village. Because of the aid they received, the Reventusk trolls are now staunch allies of the Horde. The Wildhammer dwarves at Airy Peak stood witness to the destruction around them. They watched helplessly as the humans and elves were destroyed by the Scourge. Though the Scourge has not yet reached the hinterlands, the dwarves remain on the edge of this frontier. This decision drove the Wildhammers to distance themselves from the Alliance. However, in recent times, they have rejoined the Alliance. In fact, their stronghold in Shadowmoon Valley and its other territories are places of the Alliance. While there are no instanced dungeons in the hinterlands, the zone is notable for its huge outdoor micro-dungeon, Jinta Alor. The hinterlands are the location of Seradane, one of the 4 great trees leading to the Emerald Dream and guarded by the 4 Emerald Dragons. The 3 others are in Ashenvale, Duskwood and Feralis. Notable characters in the hinterlands. The hinterlands are home to several characters of note. At Airy Peak, Falstad Wildhammer and Griffin Master Talanax seek aid in locating a young griffin. At Reventusk Village, Primal Thorntusk attempts to locate her missing mate, and Huntsman Markor sends bold adventurers into the deepest part of the wilds in search of dangerous wildlife. Thank you for watching, and as always remember, play to game and game to play.